Bienvenido a todos. It is Wednesday, April 14th, but that doesn't really matter because it's a podcast. You're listening to this whenever, wherever you are. If you're watching us on YouTube, thank you. Ambi Colon, co-host for today's episode. You might recognize her if you're watching us on YouTube, or recognize her voice if you're listening to us wherever podcasts are streamed. We actually interviewed Andrew from New York. We talked about a little bit of his research. So that is a great episode you should listen to. So really happy to have Ambi here in the co-host chair with me. We have Melissa Duprey on the show. She is a Black Puerto Rican performer, storyteller, and comic, and most importantly, she hails from Chicago. So we're really excited to have her on the show today. We've actually been trying to get her on for a minute now, but she's so talented, so busy.
Don't blame me. Don't blame me.
Melissa cut me off. I was throwing her under the bus. No, but in all seriousness, super happy to have you on, Melissa. As we start with all of our guests, what should our audience know about you?
Hola, hola, hola. My name is Melissa Duprey. She, her, queen is my pronouns. I'm a Pisces moon, Leo rising, Aries sun sign. So, you know a lot about me right there. I have been an actor, performer, a professional actor out of Chicago for about a decade. I've been seen on The Chi, Chicago PD, Empire, The Resident, and I'm currently a recurring character playing the newest intern Sara Ortiz on Grey's Anatomy every Thursday on ABC.
Well, that's a big deal, being on Grey's Anatomy. I've seen you on Chicago PD. I mean, you played doctors, you played detectives, you played
Yes.
assistants. I mean, you've done it all. But before we kind of get into some of the projects you're working on, let's back up to your roots. What part of Puerto Rico is your family from?
Both my parents are from Puerto Rico. My mother was born in Barceloneta, and my father was born in Arecibo, and those two towns are right next to each other. So they're very, very close. My grandmother still has her house in Barceloneta, and I've been going back and forth to Puerto Rico since I was a child with her. And we also have very deep roots in Humboldt Park. My grandmother, who owns a home in Ukrainian Village, did a lot of the organizing and establishing work for familial community organizations that helped grow what we now know to be Humboldt Park, knowing that the Puerto Rican migration around Chicago started around in Lakeview and then got down to Madison and then pushed further and further west to where we know it now. And so she was part of that. And she was also part of the first wave of getting Puerto Ricans registered to vote under the first Daley administration. And so my family does have a lot of roots there. And on the Duprey side, also having a lot of roots in the Chicago Board of Education. My uncle Duprey, a lot of people tell me, oh, you're Francisco's daughter. No, my dad is a twin. Francisco is his twin. And so I look just like my uncle Francisco. And Francisco ran for alderman back in the 70s, 80s. And he was part of the Barreto Boys Club, which is now the youth organization right on was that Washington and Division. So, lots of history, lots of legacy in Humboldt Park specifically. And I am a playwright. I was part of Teatro Luna's original ensemble, and Teatro Luna was originated by Tanya Sriracho, who is the showrunner for Vida on Showtime, and Koya Paz, who's the current dean of theater in DePaul. So both of those incredible femmes created a Pan Latina theater company where the diaspora of Latinas at the time, and this was Pan Latina, specifically focusing on women, specifically focusing on trans women, we were telling those stories. And so after I graduated from University of Houston with my theater degree, I came back to Chicago to tell real, authentic stories and deconstruct a lot of what I've learned, so that way I can tell stories on stage. And then that really sparked my solo career, and my solo career catapulted because community really wanted to lift this particular narrative. And all of it is very sex positive, body positive, Black centered, Latina centered, Puerto Rican centered, progressive, radical, unapologetic existence. And so that's also kind of funny. And I also do stand-up comedy. So I've been doing stand-up comedy in Zany's Laugh Factory with the Mikey O comedy shows for many, many years. So pretty much everything you can do in Chicago, I've probably done artistically.
It is such a small world, too, because we were talking about before you hopped on this call, we've seen each other in the same circles. We actually were part of that group in DC that was
Hmm.
advocating for a bill, among other things,
Hmm.
that were in the bill were things like parity for people on the island.
Yeah.
So
And
they're
still
paying
and
in.
still trying to get relief funds released to
And
Puerto Rico from Hurricane Maria.
Exactamente. So, and we've seen you at Puerto Rican agenda meetings. I think the first time I saw you, we were doing introductions at the Puerto Rican agenda meeting, and you said Melissa Duprey from the Humboldt Park Dupreys, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to know this woman. Like that's like the greatest intro ever.
That is my intro everywhere, whether or not I'm
Yeah,
like in any space. Most of Dupree of the Humble Park Duprees,
yeah,
the Humble Park Duprees aren't a thing. I have made it. I mean, it kind of is, but I, my uncle Bones and my cousin Israel,
Hmm.
they're kind of like the mayors of Chicago. And if you ran over somebody on a bicycle, it's probably a relative of mine.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm sorry, and I'm also you're welcome.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. No, no, I like I said, I loved the intro. It was awesome. And just hearing you even mention people like Goya, like I used to work at DePaul University. We actually partnered here or there on a Latinx student like art week. It was called Somos,
Yes.
so we got different students to put different art
Yes.
pieces together that were meaningful to their culture. So it was really cool. So I did not know
That's
that you had
great.
that
We are
connection with
literally
Goya.
1 degree outside of each
Right?
other,
I'm
but connected
saying.
within. I'm
I'm saying.
sorry.
I'm
It's
saying.
probably because you're a Virgo that I'm like just not like demagnetized.
Spoken like an Aries. All right, Ambi, I know you had a question. I don't want to take up all the wind here.
For sure. What made you decide to become an actor?
The spirit. I really caught the spirit of acting as a child. My first play, I was 5 years old, and my tia was the president of the Puerto Rican Forum, which was an organization back in the early 90s that was still trying to grapple with getting funds from the city for senior citizens. And she created Nuestra Familia, Family Focus. She co-developed that through the National Puerto Rican Forum. And in doing a lot of like community programming, she decided to put on a play for the senior citizens homes. And the play was called Jesus Christ Was Born a Homeless Child. And it was like an urban retelling of the nativity story where these homeless children in an alley get to watch Mary give birth to Jesus. And because Jesus is a homeless child, it makes them feel better about being homeless. And I played one of the homeless kids, and I was just like, my aunt was like, "You're so charismatic. You really love this." And also growing up in Humboldt Park, you always see performances. Everything is about ritual. Everything is about performance. And I always wanted, dancing since I was a little kid. So performance was always a thing. Never really knowing like what to do. Singing, dancing, acting, like I've done all of it. But I would say that I was always interested in drama, always interested in theater, always interested in storytelling. It wasn't until college, and I had been doing theater in middle school, high school. In college, I was pre med, I was studying nuclear medicine.
Wow.
And I was at Rice University, which is the Harvard of the South. And in my first semester, I was like, I better get out of this before it's too late. And I switched my majors, and I decided to be a full time artist and really pursue theater and performance full time. And so I had always known I've loved this, but I didn't make the commitment to say this is what I want to do until college.
I feel like at least, especially for our generation, you might have parents that were like, "Don't you want to be a doctor or like a
President.
lawyer, president?" Yeah, why just stop at doctor or lawyer, president? What did your family say when you said, "Hey, I want to go into the performing arts"?
Well, I was well on my way to becoming an attorney. I had been working in law firms since I was 15 years old. So I had, when I made the transition into doing art full time, I already had 15 years. And I was a senior paralegal at an international law firm downtown in Chicago, making okay money. It wasn't great. But I got an opportunity from the Goodman Theater to make my dreams professional and realized everything else was like I was doing theater after work and on weekends. And so people were like, well, that's cute to do. They absolutely did not think I was making a career out of it, but everything I was leading up to was absolutely making something out of it. I had done 3 solo shows up until that point, Sex Comedy, SUSHI-frito, and the Goodman came, and it was a well-paying opportunity. It was paying almost $1,000 a week, and it required me to have a Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 at the Goodman Theater kind of job. And I called 3 of my family members, my mother, my father, and my grandma. And I said, this is it. Everything that I've been working towards is this right now. I'm going to do this full time. I'm going to be an artist. This is the point where it's serious. Will you support my dreams? If I need help, I'm about to lose my job, I'm about to, get fired or quit. Will you support me? Will you do what you can? And they all said yes at that point. So it was then when they finally were like, oh, she's doing this.
Just to touch on your Grey's character, what is different about working on Grey's Anatomy versus other projects that you've worked on previously?
First of all, Grey's Anatomy is at this point part of the American TV canon. It's been around for 17 years. It's a long-standing network television show. Ellen Pompeo made history in making sure that she was fighting for women's equal pay by really grappling with networks and deciding to put her foot down and say, like, I know my worth and I know what the show means to the country. I know what it means to television. And she's now like the highest paid woman on network television. She made history in that. And so this show means so much. So I think part of the biggest difference on anything that I've ever worked on, Empire was amazing. I came on the last season, the last leg of it. I could potentially be on the last leg of this show as well, but it means so much to me. This was a show that I watched since day one with my mother. We made tradition, we made culture around it. We made a ritual around it. And when my mother transitioned 4 years ago, I stopped watching it. I just couldn't. And then out of nowhere, literally, I've been part of the ABC family since 2014 as a new talent showcase runner. I had never gotten any invitation to audition. I got an invitation to audition on a Wednesday. And 2 days later, I didn't even test. I didn't get a call back. I didn't get any notice. I got a call that said I got it. And I had to pack my car the next morning and drive to LA so that way I can make it by Monday for COVID testing. And the whole way, I was just like, this is a miracle. This just doesn't even happen that way. And we're in a pandemic. It doesn't, you usually test, you screen test, you call back, you have a director session, you might have a chemistry read. I got it. And that was just so insane to me. That hadn't happened. Empire, I walked into a director session. It was a 1-line, 1-day thing that I ended up saying, fuck it. This is the last season. I'll just do what I want. And I turned the character into a Spanish speaking person, and they loved it so much they made it reoccurring. I didn't do that with Grey's. I played it very safe, and every time I'm there, I'm just like, I cannot believe I'm here. I cannot believe I'm sitting next to Ellen Pompeo telling me how much she drinks broth in the morning, and that's it. There are people that I've seen since day one there. The Debbie Allen took over and is the executive director, and Debbie Allen was like the reason I became an artist, watching Fame as a young child one day. And so like to even go up to Debbie Allen and be like, thank you, to go up to Chandra Wilson while she's doing makeup right next to me and be like, your Emmy speech made me okay with my body and fight for my own representation. Like, this shit is wild. Every day I pinch myself like, am I here? Is this a thing? And these people are talking to me? They're nice.
Because obviously they have a 17-year-long history of, bringing representation to the screen. Mm-hmm. What is it like being Sara Ortiz on television? Like, what can you tell us a little bit about her? I know enough from like talking to you previously.
Yeah.
The Chicago Sun-Times article that I did. But obviously there's been more episodes and there's been more.
Catch the editorial if you get a chance. It's a killer article. Yeah, no, thank you for that. I wish I knew a little bit more about her. What we know is she was matched at Grace Sloan Memorial with her mother. And so we know that her mother was a retired social worker who really wanted to see change from a medical standpoint, since we have so little access to the medical industry. And so we know a lot about Sara Ortiz through other characters, through her mother, and through this mother-daughter relationship. And what we've seen so far is that they don't work together very often. Sara is really trying to find her own way. She's trying to find her own footing. She's second guesses. She messes up. And that's very much like me. Like, I will be messing up left and right, but I will be doing my best to show up and work hard and be present and ask questions. And so Sara was specifically written as an Afro-Latina character. The breakdown said that. But what I love about the show is that they will allow Lisa Vidal, who plays my mother, and myself to add our own little Puerto Rican idiosyncrasies. Like, she'll say mama and I'll say Sara, and we'll add hints and elements of the essence of our existence, but they don't specifically need to write through a lens of a Puerto Rican stereotype or trope. We just are existing as interns, and then we add onto it. So it's a very humanizing way of representing Blackness, representing Black women, representing mother-daughter. So we're just existing. I'm actually really excited about this week's episode. This week's episode does for a Native American character what I hope the show does for the Afro-Latina diaspora. It's very specifically talking about indigenous communities, how they were directly affected by COVID-19. And so the show does take a lot of care and time to dive into ethno-specific work. I think with us, they're just allowing us to be doctors for this moment.
You're not the only Boricua on the show, so that's like a really cool nugget of information that I wasn't aware of.
Lisa Vidal.
Go ahead.
Lisa Vidal, who plays. We're two Afro Latinas.
Yeah.
However, the episode that was just aired, we I don't know, set a record for having 4 Puerto Rican women in one scene. Mm-hmm. So that's the picture we posted up. Angela Alvarado was in the movie Salsa. She's like a prolific actor, and she's been in so many Latino movies. It was all of us in one room, and we put up a flag on the phone and be like, we take this representation everywhere because it's so important. Yeah. Lisa Vidal and Angela Alvarado and her sister Cristina Vidal, like, these women have had 20-30 year careers, and I'm in the same recurring position as them. We have to recognize that there have been actors like this before us that have literally pushed the envelope as much as they can, and then they have had to eat shit, and to get to this point. And for people to see them beyond the prostitute, beyond the drug addict, beyond the crazy Latina that's gonna do brujeria on you, they've played that all, and I owe them thanks. I say thank you to them every time I see them. Like, your work is how I got here.
Yeah. No, and I think it's important to recognize those that help pave the way for us in the present. Mm-hmm. And ideally, we all get a chance to pay that forward for the generation that comes after us, right?
Yes.
Speaking of people that have created a path forward for us, you mentioned your mother earlier, and I know you were matched in the show. Sara Ortiz is matched at Grace Sloan Memorial at the same time as her mother. So you'd mentioned that you used to watch this with your mom. I mean, what does it mean for you now to be a part of a mother-daughter power duo on the show?
Thank you for recognizing that. I am fortunate that I have a really beautiful community of mothers in my life. And I make sure that I'm also surrounding myself with maternal energy, because a physical mother is not just the one who raises you. Like, we need mothering. And Lisa, really quickly, we had dinner, we got to know each other, we had a whole conversation about Afro Latina. Like, she would use a term, I would say black, like she probably wouldn't say black. And she also was telling me about like how, you know, how other people in the industry, like, they want to have a unifying a unifying Latinos Latinx conversation, not a divisive one that's like, oh no, I'm black and I'm black. And I'm like, we already like had community, and we shared a lot, and we got close very quickly. And I feel like she is also one of the communities of women that I hold dear. And part of what I really want to do in my own work is center women. So I think that having her play my mom is a really beautiful opportunity to bring those conversations forward, to show unity within generations as well. Like, she's also not that much older than me. I like think a lot of people forget that I'm almost 40. Like, and she's mid 40s, but I like play a 20-year-old. So that she laughs all the time because she's like, I'm not that old. Of course. Of course she's not. She looks fabulous too, but I am fortunate that every time I tell the story about my mom, somebody hugs me, somebody brings me dear, they bring me into their life. And I'm also always surrounded by amazing mothers. Shout out to my second mama, Dupree, who's really like a rock in my life. So I don't ever feel too far away from getting parented. She'll slap me on my butt if I'm misstepping or if I'm like doing too much.
No, it's important to have those support systems. I mean, throughout, I think throughout the entirety of our lives, I think you always need that. You need that human connection. And I think the pandemic has kind of shifted the way we look at relationships and how we stay connected with one another.
Seamless segues, Josh.
Hey,
seamless segue.
Appreciate it. Only the best of best on the Paseo podcast.
That transition was smoother than butter. Wow.
Let me finish the transition then. No.
Nope, interrupted because I was like, wait, I'm in a transition.
Segue. No, but just like your character, she's an Afro-Latina intern at this hospital.
Yes.
Trained to be a doctor, is a doctor, ends up starting her career on Grey's Anatomy at this hospital because of what was needed when the pandemic hit. We need more people power, right? So shifting from your time on screen to your time now off screen, thinking more about your onstage work, as a live performer yourself, how do you feel the pandemic has affected the performing arts?
It was devastating. We have barely survived because we were barely breaking even to begin with. And I think that was a model that we needed to actually start to deconstruct. And it took a pandemic to make us realize, it's like, oh, you now realize that only 30% of your box office comes from ticket sales. You now realizing that everything that we were doing was just a thread away from becoming bankrupt. Like, this pandemic shut everything down, and it forced a lot of the gig economy. Like, actors are gig workers, but we were deemed as non-essential. But yet, artists are non-essential. But what are you watching during the pandemic? What are you reading in the pandemic? What are you listening to in the pandemic?
Yep.
How have we been able to put artists to the wayside when literally everything that you're doing to survive is because of an artist in your life somehow? The music is healing, the theater is healing, the movies, you've been binging movies, this whole time. How? So because a creator is going to create no matter what. Me personally, I took it as a blessing. I took it as a blessing because the gig economy puts us in, it's still models a capitalist society where it wants to commodify your art. It will take your body as long as you're giving your body. It will take your energy as long as it's taking your energy. And I looked at the first 2 or 3 months as a blessing of forced stillness, because if not, like, most artists are working 2 or 3 jobs to survive in Chicago, and that just doesn't give us the time to breathe, heal, even manifest and create new art, rest. We don't get an opportunity to dream new dreams and dream shit that we want to create. The rest state is a dreamscape that a lot of us aren't afforded. So even grief came up differently in the pandemic for me. And I had just finished a play called Good Grief in October 2019. The pandemic hit 3 months later, and I was still not recovered from that show. And in light of the pandemic and the social isolation and the depression and everybody's journey with mental wellness, I decided to continue my art journey with Good Grief by providing open dialogues on social media with mental wellness practitioners of color. And so, that was part of the activism that I was doing. That was part of what the show represented. So that's how I was able to extend that art during the pandemic, is like just hosting space. And it's a Facebook page. It's a Facebook page that, we meet on Zoom, and then I went live on Zoom. So like you think about like what the expenses are to make your art. I decided like what are the tools that we have at our disposal. We had all this internet, right? Like TikTok became a thing. Zoom decided to like trade publicly and make all this money on membership. And so, we are, if nothing but creatures of adaptation, and we as creators still created. So I created that dialogue space, the Thursday therapy. And every Thursday I had a new interview, a new dialogue with a mental wellness practitioner of color. People got to know about cupping, Reiki, acupuncture, therapy, psychotherapy, meditation, brujeria, santeria, espiritismo, tarot cards, you name it, it's out there. Tinctrix, herbs, naturopathy, chiropractic care, all kinds of holistic wellness that we can try to incorporate in our lives in an accessible way. Because oftentimes as people, like, I don't have money, I don't have time, I'm not white. Those are like most of the three deconstructing the taboos around wellness. And so that was what I was really like pushing for. And then my singleness kind of got to me a couple months later. And so I was just like, I had issues with the Virgo, and I was like, how do I like relieve myself of this pain? And I was like, oh, well, normally they say you won't get over him until you get under someone else. And so I'm like, you can't do that. It's a pandemic. I can't just go fuck my way to healing, and I shouldn't be doing that anyway. And so shout out to the people that are in Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. We're together alone. So I made a show about trying to close the gap on the social isolation and saying you can still get connection even if we're not outside. And so 50 Blind Dates with Melissa Dupree was born in my living room, where I had a 1-hour Zoom call, a Zoom date. And then through the magic of editing and producers, we made a 15-minute episode of a 1-hour date, complete with confessions. So it was like a Bachelorette meets Real Housewives meets Blind Love is Blind. Because my friends were hooking me up. I would just open up my computer at 6 p.m. every day, and whoever was on the other side, whatever race, whatever gender, that's who I was going to make a connection with. And the whole point was to find who I would have an awesome date when it reopened. Not love, not who I would date. Like, it was to find the perfect date, because when we kept saying, when this is all over, when this is all over, when this reopens, the first thing I'm going to do is this. I'm like, what is the first thing I would do when we can do it safely? And so it was fun. Those were the two things that I created in a pandemic. And then Grey's Anatomy hit. So the pandemic really blessed me. I was fortunate to keep creating. I filed unemployment like a lot of people did. And that's how I survived.
Just curious in terms of benefits during the pandemic, in the COVID relief bill, was the only thing that was accessible to you as a performing artist just increased unemployment?
You would think that I would have had access to, but as a 3 arts honoree, I was an honorable mention twice. They had us fill out these like grant-like applications just to be selected by lottery. 3 rounds of that, I didn't win anything. 3 rounds of the small business application, I didn't get granted for it. There were a lot of things that we just couldn't get because everybody was pulling for them at the same time. But you would have thought that something like, at least like the 3 arts that are a proponent of women and POC, like they'd be a little bit more specific and go based off of need, and they were like going off a lottery system. I was like, well, why do you need like applications for a lottery system? You would just pull names.
Right.
So I thought that there was some very interesting things that happened in the pandemic that showed me that there are people that will say no, no matter what, and there are people in power that could have said yes to working from home a long time ago, could have said yes to like a lot of things that proved to be beneficial, but some of the benefits and accessible funds, I didn't get a lot of them. I survived on my Empire savings and unemployment, and that was it.
Any advice for any BIPOC actors out there that, want to see themselves on a TV show like Grey's Anatomy one day, or want to get into the performing arts in general? Like, you got any advice for any words of wisdom for them?
A lot of people ask me for these things, and I think the only thing that I could really advocate for is for like BIPOC and Alana communities really need to own their own stories. And so I have never waited for work to come to me, or waited for the right framework of how people see me, or waited for the lens to be just right. There's never a just right, or there's never a perfect job. I think that you have to really make your own work and make your own narratives, so you can have autonomy over your own narratives, and you can control that narrative, and you can say this is what I represent, and you're not going to represent the entire people. Not People are not a monolith, right? And so like my story is specific to me, your story is specific to you, your humanity exists, and it is important, and it is worthy to be celebrated and centered uniquely and unapologetically. I think that part of it is also like, you see TikTok stars out there making a name for themselves. If this is something that you want to do it. Don't wait for the opportunity. Don't wait for the job. Make your job. Make your art. Make the thing that you want to see, and be the thing that you want to be, because ultimately somebody else is going to do it, and they're probably not going to do it as well, but just because they had the empowerment, maybe the money, maybe the opportunity to do it, but nothing is going to hold you back from doing it. And be consistent. Be consistent. Don't stop, and don't stop creating. Like, so often the case for me is the job that I get now that I really want is to feed the job that I'm going to get afterwards. So yeah, don't you didn't like Mikey O says this to me, and I recognize it, especially when I'm just like, should I quit? Should I stop? Do I want this? Is it okay to give back to the ocean what I manifested just because I don't like it, or if I don't want it? You have the power to like say, maybe I don't like this anymore, maybe I don't want this anymore. But Mikey O says this to me, you didn't come this far to come this far. If this is what you really want, keep going, stay consistent, own your story.
Any other projects that people listening should be aware of?
So later on this year,
Mm-hmm.
later on this year, I because of the pandemic, it shut down the opportunity to world premiere a play that I've been working on for 2 years. It's called Brujaha, and it is about a well-meaning but very accidental witch who really wants to hone in on her abilities to become a bruja, but doesn't really understand the responsibility and the meaning behind it. She is um, wanting to find out how she can combat social justice and wellness with the decolonized notion of spiritual and holistic healing. And so she wants to be a powerful witch and heal people, but like, at what point do you have to take your ego out of it? So it's a comedy, and it's a full-length play. It's my first full-length play that's an ensemble driven play. It was going to premiere in 2020. The pandemic said bitch wait. And it's going to be developed at Urban Theater Company as a digital play release for the world premiere, so that way people can view it safely. And it will be in collaboration with the Destinos Festival, which highlights Latinx theater in Chicago and internationally. So very excited to always be with Mina Salazar from Plata in the Destinos Festival. But this will be the first time a Puerto Rican playwright from Humboldt Park will be produced at Urban Theater Company in its 15 years of existence.
Legit. Oh, congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. I love fun facts. That's a real good one. I'm gonna share that with everybody I talk to. You see that?
Did you know Urban Theater Company doesn't produce locally?
And they're gonna be like,
I'll just
okay,
say
dude.
no.
Okay,
You're
man.
just be like, Melissa Duprey is the first.
Yeah.
Melissa Duprey is the first. That's a cute Aries tribute. I'll take that one.
We try to ask our guests some listener questions. Sometimes they're directed to our guests. Sometimes we just kind of carry them over because we think they're kind of fun questions. So, Ambi, why don't you start us off?
For sure. So, Melissa, this is about Puerto Rican food, Puerto Rican restaurant. I want to know, what is your favorite restaurant in Chicago? And then, although there's less Puerto Ricans in California, if you found a restaurant that you really enjoy.
Be careful.
So, yeah, no, I got alliances over here to keep.
They're listed.
Puerto Rican food specifically is near and dear to my heart. Roberto Perez of Urban Pilon uses a lot of my family's cookbook recipes to highlight. Emma Duprey, the Sterling, created the recipe Caldo Santo, and he just did a whole programming around her recipe. So like Puerto Rican food is really important to me. What a lot of people don't know is that my paternal grandfather was the original cook at Café Central, the first Puerto Rican restaurant in Chicago, the first established Puerto Rican restaurant. There was a lot of like little storefronts. This one on Chicago is still like the original first Puerto Rican restaurant in Chicago. So my alliances come from like my grandfather was the first cook there. Food hasn't been the best since. So, and then what's my favorite Puerto Rican restaurant now? This is kind of hard to say because I am a fan of Casa Yari. I love Casa Yari. I love her. I love fusions. I love her mixes. A lot of her food is Colombian and Puerto Rican and Peruvian influenced. However, I will say, like, if I had to get a fix and I was on the road and I needed to get something fast, Jibaritos y Mas is my jam.
You know, they're not even Puerto Rican owned. They're Venezuelan.
I hate it.
That's a recent development too that we discovered, right?
But I knew that.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that, but it's a Puerto Rican restaurant. But
they're like pique, like their hot sauce is the best I've ever had. I don't know what they do to it, but it's so good. So
I'm picky about my arroz con gandules. I make the best arroz con gandules, and I'm picky about it. Ibaritos y Mas, like, hands down, for me, has the better flavor all around. Like, some other shit is just better. And I will go there and, like, even sit down for a little bit of it. We order lechon from there, and it's always the bomb. Like, yeah, if people were coming into the city and they were like, send me to a Puerto Rican restaurant, I'd probably send them there and then say, like, take it out, go eat at the park.
Definitely. What do you do when you get a craving when you're in Los Angeles?
So there's a restaurant here. It was also like one of the first established Puerto Rican restaurants that started out of a garage, and it's called, oh my God, it's called Mofongos. Okay. It's called Mofongos, and it's known for mofongos. Probably the best bacalaoitos I've ever had. However, the restaurant name and what they're known for, the mofongo was not that great. It was everything else that was literally so good. The mofongo to me was a little dry. But when you go there, like, they have cola champans, they have maltas, the tables are all like laminated, not laminated, they're like epoxied with pictures of famous Puerto Rican athletes, actors. There's domino tables, there's salsa. Like, there are a lot of Puerto Ricans here, and apparently there's like pockets, there's salsa clubs. I feel like I'm the only one that's jamming salsa through Laurel Canyon. Like, I bring it wherever I go. But a friend of mine took me to Mofongos, and the food was legit. I was very impressed. I was super happy with what I ordered. We ordered like $60 worth of frituras, which is like, that's excessive. But it was good. I know that there are spots here that I will enjoy.
Speaking of Los Angeles, Hollywood, we got a really
Hollywood.
cool little fun game. People on the
Mm-hmm.
playground may know this as Kiss, Marry, Kill, or another word in place of kiss. Um, Fuck, Marry, Kill. But
Mm-hmm. He had to say
I
it.
had to
He had
say
to
it.
say it.
I couldn't help it. I'm a child.
That's already. I said
So,
dicks 3 times already.
oh yeah, you're right. Okay, cool. I didn't realize that. So this
Ambi's like, these kids.
the only adult in the room.
Which truly she is.
So this
Stop
game
it.
is called. It's a variation. This game is called Hire, Understudy, Extra, or Fire. So the premise is you're gonna have 4 actors on your roster to choose. Is this person gonna be hired? They're gonna be our star. They're just gonna be the understudy. Are they gonna be just an extra in the background, or are we just gonna write them off? Let's just fire them. They're not. We can't keep them on the show anymore. So your choices are Rita Moreno, Luis Guzman, Jennifer Lopez, Benicio del Toro. Who do you hire full time? Who's the understudy? Who's the extra? And who do you fire?
In my show, Luis Guzman is the showrunner and the star. So I'm hiring Luis Guzman because he has proven to me to have a prolific career and he has incredible range. He could do comedy, he could do drama, he could do all Spanish, he could do thrillers. I mean, the man is talented and he just seems like a cool guy to drink with afterwards. I'm hiring him and I'm going to make Benicio del Toro his understudy.
Okay. All right. Why
Yeah.
that? Why Benicio as the understudy?
Because I just feel like he could learn from him.
Yeah.
He could learn from him. Benicio del Toro, I think, takes himself very seriously. So I would make him the understudy just to fuck with his pride.
Yeah, humble him a little bit.
Yeah, humble him. Be like,
Mm-hmm.
you can tap in it as long as you're watching every single performance. And if Luis Guzman gets very, very sick
I dig it.
towards the end of the run, I'm making Rita Moreno an extra because but I'm gonna put her in every scene. So making it like a Carmen Sandiego find Waldo thing. Like the whole point of the show is to find where Rita Moreno is, and she'll be like in a shoe shining, sitting reading a book, and she'll just pop her glasses out, or she'll be in a restaurant sipping cafe in the back. So she will be the cameo of every single show. You have to find her, and if you find her, you win a prize. And I'm firing Jennifer Lopez, obviously.
I threw Jennifer Lopez in there knowing that she most likely would be the one getting fired. If I would do the same thing. Yeah. We ask all our guests what they're obsessed with. That can be related to Puerto Rican culture, unrelated. We talked about movies and TV shows, but if there's a particular movie, TV show that you're really into, or comic books, hobby, whatever, what are you obsessed with right now?
I'm obsessed with witch shit. I'm obsessed with, I love Good Grief. Good Grief, the Thursday Therapy show lets me interview other healers and wellness practitioners. I love me a good teen trick. I love me some Palo Santo. I love me some good crystals. I'm obsessed with just a good herb medicine book. I'm obsessed with natural everything, hair oils, makeup, natural elixirs, medicine. I'm obsessed with the decolonization of wellness, and most of that has to do with using earth materials for magic. I'm obsessed with magic. I'm obsessed with tarot. I'm obsessed with divination. I'm obsessed with meditation and espiritismo. I'm obsessed with my ile, my spiritual house, my godparents, my baba. I'm obsessed with ritual. I have 5 tremendous altars in my home. I'm obsessed with keeping them clean and being of service to my ancestors. I'm obsessed with ritual work and doing that kind of healing that keeps me attached to moving forward, because it keeps me alive. I could be dead. I literally could be dead.
For anybody that, listens to this podcast that wants to, follow you, keep up with you, see what the latest happenings in your life are, what are some good ways that people can keep up with you? You got a website, you got social media. Give us all the things.
Well, if you want to follow my dog, his tag is Yellow Lab named Doug on Instagram. He's looking at me like, "Mom, I want to go out." My latest escapades and what I'm doing in LA is always like me and my dog. So you could also watch us on Instagram at Boom Boom Dupree for all of our little LA and camping adventures. We're very adventurous. Like, the world is our oyster. But Facebook is the best way to see like a lot of commentary. I have not moved to Twitter or TikTok because I don't know how, and I'm in that like weird generation that is like in between millennials and X. So I have not yet like switched to Twitter and all that stuff. But most of my commentary is going to be on Facebook. So Melissa Dupree Performer, Melissa Dupree page, and the Good Grief Project page on Facebook is where I go live with the Thursday therapy from the Twitch channel. So if you're on Twitch, look up Chicago for Real. That's who hosts the Thursday therapy pages and interviews. They're really kick-ass programming. They're Chicago-based political comedy, holistic healing, everything, the arts, you name it, it's on the Chicago for Real Twitch page. So that's what I've been up to now. But of course, you can also catch me on Grey's Anatomy Thursday on ABC, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. And I am definitely finishing the season, so I'm secured. I'm secured all the way up until the end. And I'm so excited to be representing my Chicago family, which I love. I love my community so hard, so much. Thank you all for your support. And thank you for continuing to support this work. Check out Brujaha later this year. Follow Urban Theater Company for more information on that.
All right, Melissa Dupree, who is going to be getting an Instagram invite or Instagram follow from my dog's account, Vida de Baby Girl.
We love it.
Dogstagram. Here we go. Thank you for the time.
Thank you all. Thank you all so much.